so superheroes. God's not so superheroes. And so over the next few weeks, we're going to be talking about these heroes of the Bible that aren't really all that special. They really aren't. God does some amazing things through their weaknesses. And this is an inspiring thing for all of us because God can and is and wants to do some amazing things through us as well. So, if you're visiting with us before I get started, I think sometimes it's just best to share a laugh, either at my expense or just for your own good, because smiling is good for you. It cures a lot of things, and it helps you release some of the things that you brought into this building that maybe you should have left outside so we can hear things better. This is a superhero one. It's very corny, but I like it. And if you don't get it, that's on you. That's okay. What do you call it when Batman leaves church early?
Oh.
A Christian Bale. Anybody? Anybody? You're welcome. Thank you. Good night. All right. Now you're ready. We're good. If you didn't get that, Christian Bale plays Batman. I shouldn't have to explain that to you. But there you go. We're going to start this series out. I love this. I found this image. It might be my favorite thing, and I hope it's a real comic book. I love this. We're going to be talking about Moses. Moses is our first not so superhero that we're gonna talk about. If you follow comic books, if you follow superheroes, if you love them just because the Avengers has come out and you can't wait to see the end game, don't worry, I haven't seen it yet. I won't spoil it. I hear it's good though. You know that every superhero has a backstory. Today is part one of our story of Moses. It's just going to be a two-part deal, but you can't do a full lesson on Moses. It's too long. His backstory may be one of the best backstories of our biblical superheroes that we could have. And to be honest, he isn't very super for a long time. Moses goes through some things that maybe some of us here might have gone through too. He was born at a time of some really bad unrest amongst his people. Moses' story doesn't start with Moses, it starts with Joseph. Joseph was sold into slavery by his brothers. All of you now appreciate your family more because you didn't make it into slavery at some point or thrown in a ditch. Maybe you were thrown in a ditch, but not slavery. Doesn't matter. It starts there. And Joseph goes through this long process, and it's really difficult on him. He's a slave, he's a prisoner. He winds up being Pharaoh's right-hand man, and Egypt thrives because of this amazing prophecy that Joseph brings. He understands dreams that Pharaoh's having, and in turn, Pharaoh treats Joseph and all of his people very, very well, which is now where Moses' story begins. So if you have your Bibles, we're going to be in Exodus. You can follow along with me, or better yet, open or click open your app. Make sure I put this in there right. I don't mind you testing it. Hold that up. Okay, so in the beginning of this story, when we see Moses at work, all of the people of Israel, or the Hebrew people, started to multiply in crazy ways. And the new Pharaoh had nothing to do with Joseph and didn't really care about those people. What he noticed is that they were growing at a crazy rate. And so they started to oppress them even more. And what happened is that of more oppression, more babies started to be born. It was kind of this deal where they kept trying their best to snuff these kids out, and they kept growing at a rate that just made them uncomfortable. So Pharaoh had this idea. And he said to the midwives of the time, hey, when you're helping out Hebrew women during childbirth on the delivery stool, if you see that the baby is a boy, kill him. But if it's a girl, let her live. The midwives, however, feared God and did not want to do what the king of Egypt had told them to do, and they let the boys live. We're already starting to see, it's getting a little dicey here. His fear is so much that any boy being born is a threat to overthrow his power. Does it sound like a good backstory so far? evil king. It's like I need the trailer guy voice. In the land far away was a king of Pharaoh. Super insecure about his power, about his standing in life, that he needs to go out and kill babies. But these midwives did not want to see it happen, so they kept making excuses. And the king of Egypt would summon them and say, why have you done this? Why did you let these boys live? And they give this great excuse. The midwives answer, Hebrew women are not like Egyptian women. They're vigorous, and they give birth before the midwives even arrive. When in doubt, push blame on pregnant women. That's the way to go. These women are strong, and those babies just come out, and I don't know. And they disappear. We don't know what to do. And God was kind to midwives, and the people increased and became even more. So the more and more and more oppression and thoughts of evil ended up stimulating even more growth amongst God's people. And we fast forward a little bit, and we start to see this. This is the true backstory. So now that you know, boys don't live long. They're not trying to let them live. They're trying to take them all out. Now there's a man of the tribe of Levi, married to a Levite woman, and she became pregnant and gave birth to a son. When she saw that he was a fine child, I'm glad that he wasn't ugly. I'm just kidding. When she found that he was a fine child, she hid him for 3 months. She puts at risk everything for this boy. Because not only if the boy is found will he be killed, but most likely she would be too. Hiding him, saving him for bigger and better things. But when she could not hide him any longer, she got a papyrus basket, coated it with tar and pitch, and placed the child in it and put it among the reeds along the bank of the Nile. The most amazing things can happen when God is just at work. Because in any other time, I'm sure this baby probably does not live. God has such great and big plans that Moses can't even know what it's about because he's just a baby. I think oftentimes we get so caught up in needing something to be so big and so in front of our faces that we have to know what it is. God, you have to show me your plan. Make it so obvious. Make it clear to me. Make it where I just know it's you. But sometimes this plan is so great that it happens before you're even born. That you don't know the effects of what you're going to do until so much later. And to be honest, when we get to the real heart of Moses' part 2, Moses doesn't even get to see all the great things that is there to happen through him. He gets to see the heartache, the work, the push, but not the reward. God's plans can be so great and so big that sometimes it's even beyond what we can understand and know. So sister stood at a distance to see what would happen to him, as all good sisters do. Oh, guys, that's what she's thinking. I'm just kidding. Just fun. Pharaoh's daughter went down to the Nile to bathe, and her attendants were walking along the riverbank. She saw this basket among the reeds and sent her female slave to get it. And she opened it, saw a new baby, and he was crying, and she felt sorry for him. This is one of the Hebrews' babies, she said. Then the sister asked Pharaoh's daughter, this is a good sister, okay? Shall I go get one of the Hebrew women to nurse the baby for you? God's plan in action. Reuniting baby with mom. Making this story so deep, so connected. Yes, go, she answered. So the girl went down and got the baby's mother. Pharaoh's daughter said to her, take this baby and nurse him for me, and I will pay you. So the woman took the baby and nursed him. The story is great. Mom, in her courage, keeps this baby, saves him from certain death, keeps him for 3 months. Know that if she holds him any longer, he's going to die. Prays about this. I know she did. Sends him down the river to be saved. With her fingers crossed, God, please make this happen. Pharaoh's daughter sees it. And Moses' sister, quick, has the plan. Hey, I know some people who can nurse this baby for you. Mom gets to have baby for a while longer to instill in him a little bit of what his people are and sends him back. We start to see the backstory unfold where now it gets good. When the children grew older, she took him to Pharaoh's daughter and he became her son. She named him Moses, saying, I drew him out of the water. One day after Moses had grown up, earlier, I told you that God does some things in us, in our weakest times, in our probably our stupidest decisions sometimes even. That God can look into your life and make something happen that's so great. I want to share just briefly what happens in every superhero movie, that the darker the world gets, the brighter the heroes shine. Even if the hero is kind of a mess and dark and mysterious, their goodness shines so bright because the world is so dark. In this moment, we also see that in our darkest moments, that a true hero shines his brightest too. That when God works in your darkest, deepest moments, it is truly when we see the goodness of God in its fullness, in its brightest. So one day Moses had grown up, and he went out to where his own people were, and he watched them and their hard labor. And you have to understand that, put yourself in Moses' shoes. He knows who he is, but he doesn't. He knows that he's a Hebrew, but he's never experienced what they've experienced. Instead, he's experienced this lavish life of being the son of Pharaoh's daughter. He grew up conflicted with this identity disorder of, who am I really? What am I supposed to be? What can I do? I know that I see my people hurting and I want to help them so bad, but what do I do? And he makes some of the dumbest choices ever. And he watched them, and he saw that an Egyptian was beating a Hebrew, one of his own people. And looking this way and that, seeing no one, he killed the Egyptian and he hit him in the sand. Not so super thing to do. I don't think you gain your cape killing people. Maybe you do. In this case, we know that he was wrong because of his actions to follow. A lot of times when we make the mistakes, and our intentions were pure and good, but we do things out of our own impulse, and we do things out of our own selfish gain, and we do things to make ourselves feel better, to fit in, or to do something, almost immediately afterwards you have this feeling of, oops, I shouldn't have done that. What am I thinking? What's going to happen next? The downside is Grandpa hears about this later, but he doesn't even get the reward of what he truly wants from his people. He wants to fit in. He wants them to see him as one of their own. He wants them to know that he too is one of them. I even killed one of them for you guys. And then he sees his own people arguing with each other, and he tries to step in. He says, what are you doing? Why are you fighting? And their answer was, who made you ruler and judge over us? You going to kill us like you killed the Egyptian? And Moses was afraid, and he thought, what I did must now have become known. Not only now is he not one of his own people, but then his own grandpa's like, here's what goes down. He's like, nah, that doesn't work here. I got to make an example of you. You can't just go around killing our people. So Pharaoh heard of this, and he wanted to kill Moses. Moses fled from Pharaoh, and he went to live in Midian, where he sat down by a well. The backstory of Moses is so great because it's all tragedy. There's some rise, right? It's like, okay, you're going to die and you deserve it. You don't deserve it. You're going to die because Pharaoh doesn't want any boys to be alive, and you live. Okay, what's next? You get raised in the palace. How good is your life? It's not good enough because you see your own people. You've learned that those are your sister and brother and cousin and your mom and your dad. All you see them is slaving away all day long, building the things for the Egyptians, getting beat. Every day the oppression gets more and more difficult on God's people. And he does what he thinks is right, and he runs away because what he did was so wrong. Any of you ever felt like the need to run away from all your stuff? All your problems? If I just run away far enough and fast enough, if I just hide long enough, if nobody knows that I'm around, then all of it goes away. If I can just pull up the rug high enough and sweep all of my garbage underneath it, then it'll be okay. Maybe I can earn my way back in. I'll just go and I'll just try to do better in my new life with new people and disappear, and everything will get better. And this is what he does. And I think all of us can relate that, yeah, maybe a new start is what's best. And he goes out and he tries to do some things. Priests in Midian had 7 daughters, and they came to draw water and fill troughs to water their father's flock. Some shepherds came along and drove them away, but Moses got up and came to their rescue and watered their flock. the superhero-ness inside of him is starting to peek out. He wants to do good again. During that long period, the king of Egypt died, and the Israelites groaned in their slavery and cried out that their cry for help because of the slavery went up to God. And God starts to hear it. Part one of this story ends with Moses making a journey to hide himself, to start anew. And oftentimes what God does is something that's so unexpected for you. He calls you back to do things that you could never imagine you could do. Out of Moses' weakness that we're going to see later when we start part 2, we get to see him strengthened up by God. But let's finish this out. It says, God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant with Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. So God looked on the Israelites and was concerned about them. At this moment, where we lead into from here to part 2, is a bush starts to burn and is not consumed. And the anointing of a hero begins. Out of tragedy, heartache, fear, out of running away from all your mistakes, a murderous man that has this impulse issue, that has an anger that burns inside him, that has an identity that he doesn't understand or know, becomes labeled as the most humble man that has ever walked the earth. He gets the title of not a prophet, but a friend of God. He's one of the only people that gets to see God in his presence. Moses' transformation from confused, angry, to humble, loving servant of God is one of the most amazing transformation stories ever. And I hope it gives us hope. Because whatever your story is, I'm hoping, I don't know for sure. I don't know if many of you murdered somebody and ran here and hide away. If you did, it's a sanctuary. Don't tell me they'll have to turn you in. Just kidding. I hope that's not where we're started, but maybe some of us have. I sat with a guy a few years back. He told me his witness of coming before the Lord, and he had done a lot of really, really bad things in his life. Most of his life, he came from an abusive family. His way of knowing what love was to abuse others because the people who he thought loved him abused him. And most of his life was a cycle of abuse because that's what he knew. He was in his 40s when he wandered into a church, and I think it was because somebody he was dating at the time. It wasn't clear because he was no longer dating that person. And he said, it was different. I didn't really feel comfortable. I didn't know what to expect. And then the minister at the time sat with him and talked with him and wanted to hear his story. And he heard all of the bad. There was bad with his own children. There was bad with his wife. There was bad in his own life. Theft. Just a lot of things that he was struggling with in his confusion in his life of sin. And when he shared and confessed all these things, the minister didn't offer him any judgment. He said, I mean, I'd really love to pray with you and offer you something that I don't think anybody's ever offered you before. There's someone who has forgiveness for you. Someone that offers you redemption and reconciliation and wants to bring you back and forgive the things that you feel you're unforgivable for. He said for his first time in his entire life, he felt that there was a possibility of being forgiven. And he didn't even feel that way about his own self. And then a couple of months later, he gets baptized. And he shares this story with me about his baptism. He said, I got out of the water, and I felt in my heart I was forgiven. Never felt that had ever happened in my life. And his life transformation from that moment on changes. And instead of being a cycle of abuse for other people in his life and just building more people broken because of him and what happened to him and what happened to his father that did it to him, it became a cycle of peace and change. Building people up through their addictions and their abuse. Teaching them that there's ways out. Instead of running away and hiding, which he felt he deserved, and actually being punished, and he probably felt he deserved death. Instead, he changed. And he offered to help with others find their forgiveness. Did it make him perfect? No. Did he still have things he struggled with? Yes. Did he have a heart that was now changed forever from a God that is a loving, patient, merciful God? Yes. We all have our Moses story, our backstory, one that may come from all different ways of what you were raised into. You might have been raised in the best family ever. You found your way to God in the most peaceful ways, and you're still finding your way in this beautiful, flowery jaunt through the hillside, like the sound of music, and it's all beautiful. Awesome. Man, take advantage of that amazing story of how great God blessed your life from day one. Some of us have different stories of struggle, of heartache, but we're all here. And I want you to know that you're not here by any kind of accident. That God has been calling you to him in your life. Just like he calls Moses. From the beginning of saving him in a trough to calling him before him of a burning bush to give him his mission. You too have been brought before the Lord. And he so desperately wants you to know your mission too. To do good, to walk humbly, to walk mercifully, to love him with everything you got, to love others as he's loved you. And what that looks like in each of you, the people who you're going to come across, makes you genuinely very super in the eyes of me, in the eyes of God. That the work you do will be amazing work. But you have to seek him too. We're going to talk about what it looks like when we give excuses, when God calls us, and how he calls you even harder. It's almost like every time Pharaoh put in a bigger, more persecuting action to his Hebrews, they just kept growing. The more excuses Moses gives God later, the harder God comes at him. That's going to be part 2. Hope today, as you leave this space, as you understand the work that God has for you in your heart, that you'll be open for it. That maybe you've been running for too long, and it's time that you take a pause and ask God for his guidance and wisdom for your life. Of where you need to be and who you need to be with. What message that he's put on your heart to share. What opportunity that you might have in your life to be a witness. Some of us may be drawn to some very big things in life, and some of us may be drawn to what doesn't seem so big. All of them carry equal weight for the kingdom of God. You are all very special people. And God has called you and anointed you into his family. And you are all inheritance of a beautiful kingdom of a great God. Let's go to God in prayer. Then, Father, Lord, we don't deserve any of the things that you give us. The gifts, the talents, the life. You've offered us so much. And in return, God, I just pray that we are open to you in your calling. That where you go and send us, we will go willingly. That we will proclaim like Isaiah that here I am, Lord, please send me. That you'll give us a voice in the desert. Whatever it is in the life that you have for us, that we will be your witness boldly, courageously, knowing that you are the one that is with us, that your Holy Spirit dwells within us, and that the message you give us is powerful. God, I pray that you continue to build us up individually and also as a church, that we may be bold and courageous for you in this community and in our world. We pray this all in your Son's name. Amen.